Hey, welcome back to the Mining Pod. On today's show, we're joined by Shanon Squires, the Chief Mining Officer at Compass Mining, to talk about all things Bitcoin mining markets, everything from ASIC procurement to parts to greenfield sites to purchasing already operational Bitcoin mining sites. This is a great show for anyone who wants to get information about the current Bitcoin mining landscape. Very similar to the show with Taras from Sunnyside just about a week ago. So definitely stick around for words from Shannon. Thank you to Shannon for making the show possible. Before we get into the show, we want to thank CleanSpark, America's Bitcoin miner, and Foreman Mining, Master Mining for being the lead sponsors for the Mining Pod. You'll hear more from both these sponsors in just a little bit. Okay, before we get into the show, got to plug our two other podcasts on the Blockspace Podcast Network. You can find these by going to blockspace.media. The Gort Show is conversations with all of crypto's brightest lights. Well, at least the people who are bright lights on Twitter. People from Anatoly at Solana all the way to Alan Farrington, a prominent Bitcoin VC. Also go check out Bitcoin Season 2. It's everything from opcodes to ordinals to Charlie Spears. He is the co-host on the Thursday portion of the Mining Pod. That show is really taking off right now as well. So go and listen to The Gort Show and Bitcoin Season 2. You can find both these shows at blockspace.media. Okay, a few words from our sponsors and then on to the show. Hey listeners, let's talk about revolutionizing your mining operation with Foreman. This isn't your average management tool. It's an all-in-one solution for reducing costs and significantly boosting your revenue. Foreman brings a cutting-edge dashboard to your fingertips, empowering you with automated energy strategies. This means not only curtailing around real-time prices, but also strategically enhancing your profit margins through demand response. It's about leveraging energy efficiency to its fullest potential. With Foreman, you get a system that scales with your business, inventory management for assets, infrastructure integration, and business intelligence. Foreman elevates the cash flow and production of your entire operation. To see how Foreman can redefine your mining operation standards, visit foreman.mn. With Foreman, you're not just managing a mining operation, you're setting a new standard in the industry.
Accelerated by Compass is the premier accelerator program for Bitcoin mining sites at any stage of development. Our managed services provide expert guidance in site procurement, construction, energy agreements, and mining operations. Compass helps clients meet timelines and expectations for operational excellence, from greenfield to retrofits and everything in between. Don't just mine, excel. Visit compassmining.io now to discover how Accelerated by Compass can power your success.
Are you a retail or institutional investor interested in Bitcoin mining companies? The Miner Mag brings you free data and analysis from all major NASDAQ-listed Bitcoin mining operations to know who stands out. Check out visualized metrics and data-dependent stories at theminermag.com. Shanon Squires, welcome to the Mining Pod. How are you?
I am phenomenal, Will.
So you told me you want to buy a site. Wait, we can't do it. We got to do bio first.
No.
I know who you are, but maybe the CoinDesk audience doesn't. So who are you? First of all, why are you on the show?
I have no idea why I'm on the show, but I'm Shanon Squires. I am the Chief Mining Officer for Compass Mining. Been with Compass Mining for over a year and a half now, probably getting close to that 2-year mark. Prior to that, I did some consulting for a couple publicly traded Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin mining adjacent companies, and worked within the industry since 2017. Worked on the brokering side, selling ASICs. I worked on the side of got into hosting pretty early and trying to find people who had extra capacity and be able to fill that capacity. So back in the early days, that was more of a thing. Eventually, down the road, ended up at Compass. They had some unique problems to solve and some opportunities. So I decided it was a good time to jump in and get my hands, dirty and do the work.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning of your Bitcoin story, and then we're going to move from there to talk about current sites you guys are working on. I want to talk about like ASIC repairs, ASIC purchases on secondary markets, like post-halving is where I want to go the conversation. What does the market look like? But we got to do like the initial stuff. So people trust you, so we just don't know, like we're listening to someone who doesn't know what they're talking about. So let's start with the beginning. Where'd you get with, where'd you start with Bitcoin mining in Colorado? Because that was the first site was in Colorado, right? You're looking at
the first time that I attempted to start a Bitcoin mining farm was in Colorado. So in 2017, I went down the rabbit hole of a lot of Bitcoin miners in 2017, made the mistake of trying to mine Ethereum on GPUs, was buying GPUs from Craigslist from kids that were upgrading their gaming computers. And, it gets a little weird when you're like meeting someone's mom in a parking lot to buy a graphics card so you can get them for cheap.
How old were you at that point?
Too old. I mean, you buy them where you could get them cheap. That was the biggest thing in 2017 is like Ethereum mining was super popular. And so getting your hands on cards that had the, specs to be able to mine was not always cost effective.
Yeah.
So got into that, built a handful of rigs, quickly moved from that world into, I need to be mining Bitcoin. Same thing with went through all the day trading altcoins stuff that people do to make their mistakes and learn their lessons, and wound up at Bitcoin kind of through the same path. During that process, I got kicked out of mining in my crawl space at my house by my wife. Once you start running ASICs inside.
So she was the first hosting provider that you were kicked out of.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Ended up with a business partner who says, we need to make this big. So we put together a pilot project in Denver to just kind of show that we can do it, right? That, hey, it might be small, but we were able to take a handful of miners, put together an electrical service, and get it running even on really expensive power in Colorado. From there, it was, okay, where are we going to put this? Ended up with some connections that had a stranded gas well in Morgan County, Colorado, and went down the process of trying to put a Bitcoin mining farm there. So our scale at that time we were shooting for was about 10 megawatts. Had the lovely experience of ordering some Dragon Mints, first batch, sight unseen, them showing up a long time after they were supposed to. The world of troubleshooting that existed with those. But yeah, that was the first site, and then the investors pulled out and failed completely, so I learned a hard lesson. That's when I decided to go from dealing with self-mining into helping people get hosted.
What year was that? 2018, 2019?
2018, so it was after the crash. So yeah, That's basically got scary for everybody when Bitcoin went from, what was that, like 20,000 down to, below 10 very rapidly.
And then from there you worked with a lot of large contracts, like from, I don't know if I can say who you worked with, but like a lot of large entities out there helping them find sites, right? Mostly like energy procurement, or was also like full stack, you want to like find sites already built, or were you building sites?
So it was both greenfield and rack ready sites. The majority of the time was spent on rack ready sites. Greenfield is, it's a bigger process. It's more difficult for people to go from greenfield to a mining farm. There was still a lot of interest in stranded gas mining or various natural gas mining projects back then. And then everybody found out, well, turbines are expensive, and then they have to take care of them and do oil changes and maintenance. And so those were always, they drug along. But the majority of my time in there was spent mostly on rack ready projects. So worked with a couple of big entities and helped solve some problems, get miners placed. Compass was one of my clients that I got, I guess, brokered into a facility. So Compass had some needs for capacity. I was able to get, I don't remember how many 5+ megawatts placed into a facility for Compass. And that was the biggest thing I was doing from basically 2018 on, was contracting to help solve those problems of capacity, both ends of capacity. One was, we have this site running and we don't have any miners, or the other side of it is we have a bunch of miners and nowhere to put them.
Which one's worse?
I think if you outlaid the capital on the miners and you have nowhere to put them, that one's probably worse, because it just eats at you. Especially if Bitcoin price is starting to run up. If Bitcoin price is going down, you're kind of okay with it. But yeah.
Okay. So you've mostly worked in the Western U.S., or have you worked globally at all, or throughout the U.S.?
So in those early days, I worked globally as far as that. So setting up hosting stuff, we put together a hosting directory prior to Compass existence, where we were finding sites that had capacity and matching people together. That directory, we had over 100 Bitcoin mining entities put in there that were selling capacity. Obviously, this is all run off of Telegram and random chat groups that strap all this together. Some of the partners sold that to someone else. They sued each other. That was fun. So then I moved on, did something else. About that same time as that was falling apart, Compass Mining actually came to the forefront, and they were doing something that a lot of people weren't willing to do, which was kind of help out the retail client, right? So be able to aggregate a lot of guys with 1 to 5 miners and put them in sites where they wouldn't otherwise have access to. And so as I saw Compass coming around and doing that, obviously it was on my radar. Had conversations with Thomas back in the day around a lot of those things, but generally speaking, it was mostly a lot of time helping people place miners into facilities, and then that moved to helping people find power, find cost-effective power rates, get access to transformers, switchgear, containers, infrastructure, how to actually read an electrical service agreement and what does it mean. the Bitcoin mining industry comes from a different world than the power industry, and most of the time they don't speak the same language. So bringing those two pieces together was a big,
hurdle. Task.
Yeah, just gives you something to do.
And you were kind of self-taught with a lot of that, right? Because that was not your background, or partially your background.
Well,
because you've run a lot of businesses.
Yeah. So prior to this, I'm an exercise physiologist by education, right?
Yeah.
So I worked for CU and Schutz. I ran their human performance lab, did research associated with National
Basically,
Institute of
Huberman.
Health. Yeah. Ran businesses for some larger fitness entities, including my own business, and a few other things. But when I learned about Bitcoin in 2017, I just went down the rabbit hole, decided I want to be a miner, and put all my focus into that. I happened to have just grown up on the western slope of Colorado around gas and oil and on a ranch. And so, and then happened to have been a nerd. So I could, figure out all this stuff. My friends are work in the IT world and all that. So had all the pieces. And then there was there's always education to learn. Every day I still learn stuff. So whether that's learning stuff from a standpoint of like, what does it take to get a foreign entity to own property in the US?
Yeah.
Right. Didn't start with those skills.
Yeah. I'm curious about like moving from your own shop and mining to an established company like Compass. What was the reason for doing that? Were you just kind of tired of all like the bullshit of running your own thing and having to deal with partners, or what made you like take a leap?
Yeah, the biggest thing is like when you're running around doing it on your own, you spend a lot of time in that broker role, right? Where you're trying to find a project that's valuable and then get it put together. And 99% of those never come to fruition, right? So you're working down one path, trying to get something accomplished, and then it fails, whether that was a permit or a load study or an investor or access to something. Like, just too many of them fell apart. And so for me, it was exciting just to go to be a company that's, hey, we're a hosting company. This is what we do. We want to keep growing that. We want to host more people. So there was no longer a bunch of projects that were going to fall apart. It was, let's just take this project that's already here and just continue to make it better, continue to grow it, continue to move forward.
Well, the conversation I want to get into was what the market looks like post-halving. So we're having you guys on, and then Sunnyside Digital in a few weeks to talk about like the Bitcoin mining market post-April 2024. And Compass is obviously building a lot of sites, has placement in a lot of sites. You guys now have your accelerator program where you help people like build their sites through Compass. So let's go through all those things, and maybe we can walk out, first of all, like where Compass is at, what you guys are building currently, where you guys are hosted at, those sort of things. And then we can get into like those questions about the market.
Yeah. So right now, like our biggest focus and my biggest focus is removing reliance on third parties. It's been a bit of a thorn. Like anytime you got to rely on someone else, like there's always going to be, whether it's the best relationship possible or not, there's always going to be better ways that you want to have it done. And so that's been a big focus. I think it's been pretty public over the last year or so as we relocate out of various facilities into other facilities and continue to consolidate that down. So that's been a focus. And then, we moved from that to focusing on operations. So operating a lot of the sites we're at. So even if it's owned by a third party, being able to operate our clients' miners and have more control over that so we can create a better environment for anybody that's hosting with us, right? So huge focus on operations, basically went from no boots on the ground to boots on the ground across multiple facilities. That led to actually doing third-party site operations. So operating for people who have Bitcoin mining farms, whether they're a hosting company or self-miner, that just didn't necessarily have the experience or were struggling to operate it. So contracting us to come run it when there's no Compass miners or clients involved. Outside of operations, then it's also the next piece is owning the infrastructure. So making sure that we're the ones that are acquiring and owning the infrastructure. So if there's issues or concerns, we can deal with it directly. We don't have to wait for some third party to get the money to buy a part, to put it in, to continue to delay stuff.
Yeah.
So that's been the largest focus. Now the final focus is, okay, let's make sure now we own the rest of it. Let's own the land and the power agreement and everything underlying.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest focus right now. And you've probably seen that across a lot of companies in this space is how do we move from, third party relationships to fully owned and in-house, I guess, full stack solutions.
Yeah.
And I think the market is generally doing that. So you see other large companies that were primarily hosted with third parties acquiring sites and taking them over and getting into that space. And I kind of see that across the board. There's still a robust market on the hosting side. There is a very large demand. There's not enough infrastructure currently built. So that's still driving, thriving, continuing to move. I don't know that I'll ever go away.
That's surprising though, because a lot of people thought hosting was going to be dead after last cycle. Why do you think that? Just can't die? It's like a zombie market?
I mean, generally speaking, like as you get to scale and be able to move into places at scale, you have more cost-effective rates. And so even hosting rates that are fully managed hosting rates are typically less expensive than what you're going to be able to do on your own in a lot of places, especially when it gets to scale. The other side of it is just the expertise, right? There's a lot that goes into building a Bitcoin mining farm. So, every piece of this is its own industry: land acquisition, power acquisition, getting power to a site, transformers, infrastructure, IT, networking, metal fabrication, airflow within the containers to keep them overheating or into the buildings, if it's a building or that. Like, there's just so much that goes into it. Not a lot of people have all of that expertise in one place. And then usually there's not a person who has enough experience doing it that they can run a team across all those multiple industries to be able to put this together. So I think that's part of the reason it'll stay around. The other side is just people being capital light, right? It's a pretty clean, financial model to say, hey, it's going to cost me this much. I plug these things in, and then maybe Bitcoin price goes up, maybe it doesn't. Difficulty will probably go up. What does it look like?
In the competitive world of Bitcoin mining, one name stands out: CleanSpark, America's Bitcoin miner. At CleanSpark, efficiency isn't just a goal, it's our standard. Our sophisticated facilities are built and led by expert teams who care about Bitcoin and the communities we work in. Scale? We've mastered it. Our large-scale operations have set us apart in the industry as examples of community-oriented building. Our track record speaks for itself. We navigate the complexities of the new economy with precision and with skill, continuously achieving operational milestones. Curious about how we do it? We invite you to discover the story behind CleanSpark's success at cleanspark.com.
Tell me about the accelerator program really quick. I've heard a few people talking about that and mining specifically.
Yeah, so basically what we call Accelerated by Compass, kind of soft launch it. I don't know that we've done a whole lot of marketing about it, but it's just taking and solving all those problems. So Compass has been able to solve just a monstrous amount of problems over its years of existence, before I got here, after all, while I've been here and everything else. And everybody experiences these same problems. So everything that I just kind of mentioned that goes into building a site, or goes into managing a site or operating a site or acquiring miners or just shipping stuff from China or across the border to Canada. Like, these are all problems that we've already found solutions for and optimized for. Yeah. So instead of having to go start from scratch and do it all yourself, we're just offering to take that experience and lay it out and help people do it.
Okay, so is it like you join a program, you guys teach people, or do they just get access to the services by paying you guys for things?
It's much more a bit on a contract by contract basis, right? Yeah. So some people are looking to acquire a site, right? And they don't know the first thing about doing that. So, generally some sort of agreement gets in place of, hey, if we go through and I spend the next 6 months, doing this, how are you funding load studies? How are you paying the landman? All that kind of thing. And our team and our expertise is being put towards it. Yeah. What does that look like? So we'll put that agreement together, make sure we have a clear understanding of what that client wants. So, hey, if they come, I want, sub 2 cent power, and I can just tell them it doesn't exist, go have fun. Yeah. Or it's realistic, and tell them it's realistic, put some bounds around that, give them some expectations. And if they think it's all good, then we'll move forward. Then they just, instead of having to go assemble their own team, we just put our team to work for them. Gotcha. On the operations side, it's very similar. So if people are looking, maybe they've got a site going, they're trying to figure out how to get people trained and staffed up to optimize their site operations. That type of situation, they contract us, we come in, we hire locally, we train locally. So we're, building the community from within, making sure that we're bringing those skills and upskilling those people so they can move up within, that various Bitcoin mining farm as a company, develop those skills and take it with them. So it's more than just, hey, we send in staff. It's, we actually go train locally, staff it up, and then we support that remotely. So once we have the staff members there and running the site, We have a pretty globally spread out team that does remote operations as well, so that we can manage a lot of aspects of Bitcoin kind of around the clock, or Bitcoin mining, I should say. So being able to provide the support of that team with that, and then just additional expertise. So if hey, something breaks, we bought this container from some random company and this doesn't work or that doesn't work, cool. Let's, here's the engineer, we need to fix that. Here's the, here's where we buy fans from. Transformer blew up. Here's how we get a new transformer. Just solve all those problems. They run through it. Like, if they haven't experienced it yet, they're going to run into them, and just help them do that.
And you guys have. Okay, I got that. So let's talk about the current market. Let's start with, I think, the facility level. You take a look at a lot of facilities. What are you seeing right now in terms of people wanting to buy and sell facilities? And feel free to speak from like your own experience with Compass doing it, or maybe you're just seeing like brokerage markets for like these different facility sizes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just with a lot of people wanting to go own their own infrastructure, both greenfield sites, so essentially a site that has nothing other than there's a substation nearby that has access to power. Hopefully the person trying to sell that site's done their due diligence. They have a load study. They know the power is available. They know the voltage. They got the cost to serve, right? So greenfield site that we know the power is there. I think there's some public companies that have purchased things like that recently. They kind of set a market price.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where everything's still plus or minus, depending on the perks and benefits of those individual sites. So a lot of hunting for those sites going on out there. There's still a massive amount of people that like see a substation on the side of the road and think they can sell a blank piece of land next to a McDonald's and build a Bitcoin mining farm. But people have actually done their due diligence, done the load studies, went and talked to the cities and the counties and went down the special use permit route. Actually have those put together. Those sites become fairly valuable to be picked up pretty quickly, depending on their size. Like, generally speaking, the market is for 10 megawatts plus. Under 10 megawatts, most of those sites are not as interesting to a lot of people, but once you have 10 megawatts or more, or expandability, that's when it becomes interesting. And what people are purchasing is the access to that power.
Yeah.
So if you don't have, some sort of electrical service agreement to actually get the power delivered to that site, you don't really have anything yet.
For the 10 megawatt thing, that's kind of interesting, because I've had a few people on the show talk about how there's going to be like a push towards finding between like 5 and 50 megawatts in like multiple rural locations and kind of stringing them together as mining farms, as opposed to like this mega mine idea that like the riots of the world have been using. Do you think that it kind of fits into what you're saying still?
Yeah. So basically what happens is when you look at like we're Bitcoin miners are out there trying to be cost effective in putting these together. It's not like we're a Microsoft or a Google going to build a new data center. We're not spending that kind of money on this stuff. It's too risky from that standpoint. So we got to find opportunistic ways to get power. We got to find power that it's cost effective because no one else wants it, right? So you got solar that's overproducing in the middle of the day, driving down market prices, or wind doing similar. Renewables are good just because they produce power when no one's using it, and we don't want to waste that energy. Or you find areas where there may have been a lot of manufacturing that's now gone because it got moved overseas or somewhere else. And so first thing you do is you try to find that opportunistic power rate. Once you find that, the reason the 10 megawatt scale, or I put it in that kind of benchmark, is because basically most of the utilities in the United States, they go through, they have large transmission level stuff, and then it drops down into distribution stuff. And if we're trying to get to distribution voltage like that, 34.5 or 34.8 kV and below, stuff that's easy to us to then step down and get into a Bitcoin mining farm, you're going to find that in blocks of like 10 to 15 megawatts for the most part. 5, like there'll be 10 megawatt substations with 5 available, or a 30 megawatt substation with 10 available.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, you're not going to find multi-hundred megawatt substations with nothing connected to it anymore, unless there was a recent like smelting plant that went offline or manufacturing thing that disappeared. So I think that's the reason a lot of people are focused on that, is it's low hanging fruit. It doesn't require that step down from transmission voltage to distribution voltage. So if you're going from 300 plus kVA or whatever down into distribution voltages, that requires a substation to be able to transform that power. Those are expensive, they're time consuming. Like there's some on the market that are readily available, and they're mobile substations, but generally speaking, it's a much longer process. Like it puts projects out, 18 plus months in most situations, which is fine. I mean, you see it used to be Iris, now it's Irene. They purchased a 600 megawatt substation, landed in Texas, and you saw that process and the time frame it took to put that together. But obviously, they're doing well with that decision. So you can still go make that decision and do that. But for the most part, people want something that's faster. They want something they can put together in 90 to 120 days.
Gotcha.
And so that's what they're hunting for, which is typically going to be smaller sites. If you can find a bunch of smaller sites close together, awesome. That's easier for operations. That 10 megawatt scale is where operations starts to get to that tipping point of economies of scale. Under 10 megawatts, not really the economies of scale for operations, but above it is where you get there.
What's like the cost per megawatt you're seeing right now? Is it a lot different from 2021 or 2022?
Power?
Just for building out a site.
Oh, it's always been kind of the same. Like the dollar per megawatt for building a site ranges from like $175,000 per megawatt to $350,000 per megawatt. It depends on the market. So if there's no transformers available, then you're paying more. If you got a good contractor, if you're ordering stuff from China, if you're ordering US made,
But there was like a supply or a crunch for transformers like 2 years ago, right? So like a lot of those things have been kind of worked out. Like the kinks and supply chain stuff has been worked out. So would you know?
No, I mean, basically there were a lot of Bitcoin miners that bought up a lot of stuff.
Okay.
And there were other entities buying up similar stuff. But generally speaking, Bitcoin miners are buying, 415, 240 step-down transformers, by the rest of the North America is buying these 480, 277. So they're kind of two different paths for the most part. A lot of Bitcoin miners purchased these, and a lot of them failed. We saw some bankruptcies. We saw some liquidations, both private and public. And so a lot of that hardware kind of got picked up and moved around and sorted. There's still some pockets of it here and there.
Yeah.
So if you're digging around and you're involved in the Bitcoin mining industry, you can generally find what you need pretty quickly. That doesn't mean it's not going to be all bought up again. Like there was a period of time in which you were trying to get a fully like turnkey, like modular data center in a shipping container, and you're waiting 6 months minimum to have that manufactured. Just because there was no inventory. Now the inventory is still light, but there's some sitting here or there. The manufacturers are bringing them out, and you can get them a bit quicker. People have learned how to build steel buildings more cost effectively instead of doing the containerized models. So those costs are coming down and being more comparable to the containerized model of the past as well. There's also different tax incentives. So if you're some states, cities, counties require it to be a physical building versus shipping containers set down. So there's a lot of variables in there. And then the quality of it, right? If you're looking for something that's going to get you 80% uptime versus something that's going to get you 95+% uptime, one's going to cost you more.
Okay. So costs are very similar from 2-3 years ago, is what you're saying. I want to go into like the bear market and liquidations there, and then halving. Are you expecting halving liquidations to be similar, or what is your thought about this? I remember talking to you about this about a year ago, and you were like 6 weeks of paying around the halving. That's it. And technically, we'd be in that 6 week window. It's the 30th right now. So
So like there's the last few times that I've been in kind of a repressed market, right? There's this period of time in which mining gets kind of crunched. Like the worst one of those I dealt with was 2018. Far worse than anything since then from a Bitcoin mining standpoint. Right now, everything looks okay. Like the crazy rune stuff and ordinals like pump the price post halving, or like pump the mining reward post halving. All those transaction fees. So it was a bit of a different experience than normal. Normally, you haven't hit a new Bitcoin all-time high, right? So that typically happens 6 to 12 months post halving. Now it's happening prior to the halving. So this is a very different market than previous. But now we're down to, low hash price, right? So I think it's record low at this point in time. So people are feeling that pain. So people with higher power rates, higher hosting rates, and older hardware. So, 30 watt per terahash or higher stuff, somewhere in that, I don't know when this is going to be viewed and what date people are going to stamp and say I'm wrong, but it's getting rough on a lot of S19 series hardware. And so that's going to be, it's kind of because we run a marketplace, right? So we have people buying and selling. And I expected people to have been dumping S19 miners already, and I haven't really seen it. There's still a lot of people holding out. Maybe they're thinking, hey, the S9 had this hard period of time, and then it came back and we're able to, liquidate it for more months later. Maybe they're hoping for something like that.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Maybe they're just diehards. They're just like, I'm mining at all costs. I want my Bitcoin mined. I don't want to buy it from some exchange. So it's a little bit different. But I still expect, it was also the timing of the month versus like people's power bills.
Yeah.
Right. So you think about like
interesting.
a utility bill coming into a mining farm, like they would have, if they're prepaying power and things like that, they may have already paid for this month anyways. Right. And so they want to keep it running as long as they've already paid for in some situations.
I
So
didn't even think about that. That's funny.
yeah, you got to like, there's a lot that goes into why you keep it plugged in. Some
Yeah.
people just have cash stuck away and they'll pay their power off the cash they have and mine Bitcoin and hope that a handful of other people turn off before they do. Like that was the big thing from Chinese miners was they would just hold cash. And when they went through those, however long, whether it's 3 months or, 6 weeks or whatever that process was, they just pay cash to keep their miners online and keep that difficulty high and watch other people fail until eventually they were profiting again.
Gotcha.
So who knows? I don't know how it's going to play out. I've just seen it play out a few ways.
Yeah.
It's obviously completely different this time due to Bitcoin price, crazy stuff being put on Bitcoin. And yeah.
Okay, let's talk about ASICs and the repair market in the 10 minutes or so we have left. What does the ASIC market look like from Compass's purview? You said you guys have a marketplace. We're looking at a bunch of ASICs on you guys' warehouse here too. So what does that market look like so far?
I mean, it's just been kind of status quo, right?
Okay.
So
Nothing to report. Just boring.
nothing like I haven't seen anything crazy yet, right? You get new miners coming in, they're expensive.
Yeah.
As new miners start to flood in, you get old miners that have been running for a few years that come out and their price varies on the market. Obviously S19s and J Pros and things like that are getting to a pretty low price. Like I consider regularly like, oh, should I just buy a bunch of used S19s and use parts to repair miners and swap them out versus actually repairing the miner and unsoldering ASIC chips and putting them back on. So we're getting to that point that on various S19 models that the cost of a used miner is the same cost to repair every part in the miner. So that creates a bit of turbulence there, or advantageous for people doing repairs, not so much for people trying to offload their hardware.
Okay. So that hasn't changed too much. That's kind of boring. I was hoping for
It's like
sort
any
of-
other business. It's just the same thing in another year.
Need ASIC help? Check out Vitamine, one of Bitmain's certified repair shops located in Washington State with satellite offices in Colorado, Oklahoma, and Texas. PSUs, hashboards, immersion setups, in and out of warranty repair, Vitamine has you covered. Want to train your technicians? Bring Vitamine to your site for hands-on training in the art of ASIC repair, complete with Bitmain AMTC certification. Contact Vitamine today at dan@vmasic.com. Again, that's dan@vmasic.com. When you think of ASIC repair, think Vitamine. I was hoping for something there. What about ASIC repair markets? I remember 2 or 3 years ago, that was crazy lines just to get anything done and like getting parts. Probably a lot of post-China ban influence from there. But what are you seeing?
A lot of the biggest constraints on repair in in the US was just the lack of trained technicians and skill set to be able to do it. So there were a handful of shops that started to sprout up over the years. Like in the early days, there was like no shops and everything got sent over to China. And then there was a couple shops, and then Bitmain warranty repair started authorizing some of these shops in the US to do warranty repair, and they grew.
Yeah.
And so now there's a lot of repair shops. There's repair shops all the way across the US. And back in the day, repair used to be super expensive, mostly because there was a handful of people who could do it, and there was a backlog, so they could charge whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
And so they just charged what the market would bear, and they'd be just fine. Now there's so many shops that it's become super competitive. So prices have went from like $300+ a hashboard to fix down to, I think I offer.
Explain what that is for people who don't know what a hashboard is in the first place. Because there's some people who don't know that.
Yeah, so Bitcoin miner, most Bitcoin miners are an aluminum box, and inside the aluminum box, there's 3 PCB boards, like green or they're aluminum. So a computer board has a whole bunch of chips on there. Those are called ASICs. So they're like little processors, but ASIC, application-specific integrated circuit. They only do one thing. These just do SHA-256. On those boards is a bunch of other stuff, and they break. So temp sensors, capacitors, traces, the chips themselves, all kinds of stuff on the board can break. And so to repair it, you have to take it all apart. You have to desolder stuff, resolder back on components. So that's what we're talking about, is like actual electronics repair. And so when we do that, like, used to be on, like, if we take like a S19 series to kind of keep because obviously aluminum boards and new miners way more expensive. Whenever a new miner comes out, like the price could be $600 a board, $900. I've paid $900 a board for repairs of brand new generation miners because no one know how to fix them.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, for a long time, it was like $300+ per hash board to get fixed, regardless of what the repair was. Even if it was something simple like a temp sensor, or if it was complicated like 5 chips, a temp sensor, and 9 traces.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like able to offer, like for bulk stuff, like, you know, significantly reduced pricing. We're looking at being able to pass that on to a lot of our clients as well from that standpoint.
Yeah.
The prices are coming down. And I don't know if it's like combination of access to one, talent, skilled people. So we've been internally hiring and training people to do hashboard repair, but so have all of the shops. And so just that access to people and created that competitiveness has started to drive down this price.
Why did Bitmain and MicroBT and others like open up these doors for training? Because that was a thing they were like kind of hesitant to do that for a little bit. Was just because there's such a demand in the North American market at this point that they had to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's basically it. In the early days, like there was no one fixing them, and then there was a few people fixing them, and then it became a business to fix them, right?
Yeah.
The other side of that's, you know, customer service, right? Everybody hated, you know, Bitmain's customer service, and if you thought about like, if you actually got to the point of sending your miner back to China to be fixed and then get told it's scrapped after you paid to send it there, it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
Which some of that's still the same, right? But we've just learned to deal with it.
Yeah.
Other pieces of that are just, you know, improving customer service. So the industry has evolved from a lottery of computer what's going to happen to a we need to provide a better service to outcompete the other person manufacturing these, right?
Okay.
So if just like, you know, iPhone, if they provided worse service, then they get less clients. They provide good service, they get more clients. So the industry is just evolving and maturing. And so I think that's one of the main reasons. And we're seeing that across all the manufacturers now, right?
Yeah.
So there used to be a handful that still didn't have repair in the US, Canon being one of those. Now they have repair in the US.
Yeah.
So I think we'll continue to see that evolve and grow and mature. And then I think just like any other industry and business, we'll see a lot of these repair shops thrive and fail and merge and all that stuff.
What are some predictions as we close out here for what this summer in 2024 looks like? What do you think the mining market's going to look like? What are you trying to plan ahead for at Compass from a business standpoint? Because those would be kind of like practical implementation of your thoughts on the market.
I mean, outside of like consolidating and removing third-party risk, which we see an industry trend moving to, the other piece of it is just, you know, everybody's expecting like a full bull run to happen, right? And so when Bitcoin price goes crazy, people get interested in mining. They want to get miners. If they've never done it before, getting into a hosting agreement with, you know, a single miner, a handful of miners is an easy, like dip your toe in way to go do that.
Yeah.
So that's our biggest thing, is trying to make sure we have rack space for that inflow, or people who have been with us for a long time. You know, we have clients that have been here since the beginning and, you know, continue to get new clients regularly. They want to expand. They want more miners. They want new miners. They want to upgrade their fleets. So I think we're going to see a large upgrade of older generation miners. So the S19 series, and, you know, all upgrading into, you know, S21 and newer hardware. So we'll see that big upgrade. And then we'll just see that rack space continue to flow. I don't see any like slowdown. I think the biggest thing is just like how fast can we build infrastructure? I think we'll probably see some crazy infrastructure prices again as we hit the bull run. So we'll go from mining farms selling in the $400,000 per megawatt range for fully turnkey farms. And I think we'll just see that go higher because there's be less and less on the market. And more demand.
400K is like the upper bound for it already, right? I've heard of some like 450.
Yeah, I think like if you go look up the Marathon acquisitions, there's some sites that are on the market that are publicly advertised that are above that.
Yeah.
We see some stuff in the private space closing for below that, but I would say like that 400K per megawatt's kind of that for a fully turnkey site, depending on a lot of things.
Awesome. Shannon, thanks for joining the Mining Pod.
Yeah.
Where can we find out more about you or follow you? Your Twitter handle.
I am on Twitter. I think my handle is at Shanon Squires.
Nice.
Someone could correct me if I'm wrong.
Pretty sure that's right.
So pretty easy to find there. Obviously, you know, compassmining.io for all things associated with Bitcoin mining at this point. Oh, we have a parts store.
Oh, nice.
We haven't announced
You wanna
that
shill
yet.
it?
Can I shill it?
Yeah.
We sell everything. If it's not listed on there, just ask. We got it. So hashboards, if you want old hash boards, control boards, so new control boards, power supplies, cables, basically anything you need for Bitcoin mining, whether that's repairs, operations, that type of stuff. It's over here in boxes.
Do you have mics?
No.
No podcast mics?
No
Okay.
podcast mics.
RIP. Okay.
Oh, it's okay. Thanks for joining.